The town square smelled of dust, leather, and fear. The kind of fear that sat low in the belly and never truly left places built on conquest and coin. By midday the sun had burned the morning chill away, yet a strange hush hung over the wooden storefronts, as if even the buildings knew something irreversible was about to happen. Men leaned against posts, women clutched shawls, and children peeked from behind skirts, all eyes drawn to the raised platform at the center, where human lives were reduced to property. That was where she knelt, the Apache woman, her wrists bound behind her back, iron biting into skin that had known wind, horses, and open sky. Her name, though no one there bothered to ask, was Ayana. She kept her spine straight despite the chains, her chin lifted, her dark eyes calm in a way that unsettled the crowd more than any scream might have. A sign hammered crudely into the platform read "For Sale," the letters uneven, as if the man who carved them had rushed, eager to be done with the act itself. Ayana did not look at the sign. She had seen worse words written in blood and fire across her people's land. Instead, she focused on breathing, on remembering the sound of water over stones, the laughter of her sisters, the steady voice of her mother, telling her that dignity was the one thing no one could take unless you surrendered it. Around her, murmurs rippled, some hungry, some curious, some cruel. To many, she was an exotic prize, a symbol of victory over a people they barely understood. To others, she was simply labor, something strong enough to work and quiet enough to obey. None of them saw her as a woman who had loved, lost, and survived. The auctioneer's voice cut through the air, sharp and practiced, announcing prices as if he were selling cattle. Ayana felt the weight of each word like a stone thrown at her chest. She had been captured months earlier, after soldiers burned her village and scattered her family to the four winds. Since then, she had learned how quickly humanity could be stripped away, how silence could be both shield and prison. Still, she refused to lower her gaze. If this was to be another ending, she would meet it standing tall on her knees, unbroken in spirit if nothing else. At the edge of the crowd stood a man named Thomas Hale. He was not rich nor powerful by the standards of the town, but he carried himself with the steady gravity of someone who had endured grief and responsibility in equal measure. His coat was worn, his boots dusty from long days on the trail, and his beard flecked with gray despite his still strong frame. He had come to town for supplies and had not planned to stop. But his daughters had seen the crowd first, their small hands tugging at his sleeves, curiosity pulling them forward. He should have turned away. He had seen enough ugliness in his life already. Yet something, perhaps the way the Apache woman held herself, or the way the crowd's gaze felt like a collective wrong, rooted him in place. Beside him stood his daughters, Clara and May. Clara, the older at 10, had eyes too observant for her age, shaped by loss she did not yet have words for. May, only 7, still clung to innocence, but felt injustice like a bruise she couldn't ignore. Their mother had died 2 winters earlier, leaving a quiet that never quite lifted from their home. Thomas had done his best, cooking, cleaning, listening, but some absences could not be filled by effort alone. He had learned to live with that ache, or so he thought. The auctioneer's chant continued, bids rising and falling with casual cruelty. Ayana heard numbers she did not understand, only the tone, the sound of men deciding her worth. She felt anger stir, hot and dangerous, but she pressed it down. Anger, she had learned, was often punished more harshly than silence. Still, her eyes flicked across the crowd, meeting faces one by one, daring them to truly look at her. Most looked away, a few smirked. 1 or 2 hesitated, unsettled. Then she saw the children. Their stares were different. They were not appraising, not fearful, not mocking. They were searching. Clara's brow was furrowed, Her lips parted as if she wanted to ask a question but didn't know how. May clutched her father's coat, her small fingers tight, eyes wide with something that looked dangerously close to recognition. Ayana's chest tightened. She did not smile. This was not the place for softness. But she let her gaze soften, just a fraction, enough for the children to feel seen. "Papa," May whispered, her voice barely audible over the auctioneer's call. "Why is she on her knees?" Thomas swallowed. No answer that would not break something inside his daughter. "Because," he began, then stopped. Lies felt heavier than silence. "Because this world isn't always kind," he said finally. Clara didn't look at him. Her eyes were fixed on Ayana. "She doesn't look bad," she said, confusion sharpening into quiet anger. "She looks proud." The auctioneer, sensing a lull, raised his voice. "Pick anything you want," he called out to the crowd with a grin, gesturing broadly. "Strong as they come, worth every dollar." Something twisted in Thomas's chest at the word anything. He had heard men speak that way before, about land, about animals, about people who were never meant to be owned. He shifted his weight, ready to turn away, to take his daughters home and pretend he hadn't seen this. That was the safer choice, the easier one. But before he could move, May stepped forward, her small boots crunching against the dirt. She pointed. The gesture was innocent, unguarded, and it sliced through the noise like a blade. "Papa," she said clearly now, her voice carrying, "we want that Apache woman as our mom." The square went silent. Even the auctioneer froze, his mouth half open, grin faltering. A ripple of laughter followed, sharp and mocking, but it died quickly when no one joined in. Thomas felt the blood rush to his ears. His first instinct was panic. People were staring, waiting for him to laugh it off, to correct his child. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked down at May, then at Clara, who nodded slowly, as if confirming something she had already decided. "She needs a family," Clara said, her voice trembling but firm. "And we need one too." Ayana's breath caught. For the first time since her capture, something cracked through the careful wall around her heart. Not hope, not yet, but surprise so sharp it almost hurt. She had been called many things since the day her village burned. Property, savage, prize, never mother, never wanted in a way that did not strip her of herself. Thomas straightened. He felt the weight of the crowd's expectation, the judgment, the danger. This was no small thing his daughters were asking. It would change everything. It could ruin them. And yet, as he met Ayana's gaze, he saw not a possession, but a person standing at the edge of annihilation with dignity intact. He thought of his wife's last words to him, whispered through pain and fear. "Teach them to choose what is right, even when it is hard." He drew a slow breath. The auctioneer cleared his throat, ready to regain control. Thomas spoke before he could. "How much?" he asked, his voice steady, though his hands shook at his sides. Ayana closed her eyes for a brief silent moment, not in surrender, but in prayer. The chapter of her life she had known was ending. What lay ahead she could not see. But for the first time since the chains closed around her wrists, the future did not feel like a grave. And in the stillness of the square, with dust hanging in the air and fate tilting on a child's pointed finger, everything began to change. The moment Thomas spoke the words, "How much?" the town square exhaled all at once, as if everyone had been holding their breath waiting to see whether courage would appear or disappear. The auctioneer recovered quickly, greed snapping back into place, and named a price. Meant to sting, meant to test whether this man with 2 daughters was serious or merely sentimental. Thomas didn't haggle. He reached into his coat, counted out the money with hands that trembled not from doubt, but from the understanding that some decisions redraw the shape of a life forever. When the final coin hit the auctioneer's palm, the sound echoed louder than any gavel. The chains were unlocked. Metal fell away from Ayana's wrists and ankles, clattering onto the wood like a bad dream finally breaking. She stood slowly, legs stiff, body wary, eyes never leaving Thomas or the girls. Freedom was not something she trusted easily anymore. Too often it had come with hidden teeth. Clara stepped closer first, small but determined, holding out her hand, not to claim, not to pull, but to offer. May followed, pressing herself against her father's side, peeking up at Ayana with a shy smile that carried no fear. Something ancient and fragile loosened in Ayana's chest. She knelt again, this time by choice, so her eyes were level with theirs. She placed her hand over her heart, a gesture from her people that meant, "I see you." The girls mirrored her without knowing why. In that simple exchange, more was said than words could ever manage. The walk out of town was quiet. Eyes followed them, some burning with resentment, others with confusion. No one stopped them. Thomas's shoulders remained tense until the buildings thinned and the open land stretched ahead. Only then did he release a breath he felt he had been holding for years. At the wagon, he paused, finally allowing himself to look fully at the woman his daughters had chosen. "You don't owe us anything," he said carefully. "You're free to leave if you want. I won't stop you." Ayana studied his face, searching for the lie she had learned to expect. She found none. After a long moment, she shook her head. "I will stay," she said, her voice steady, accented but clear. "Not because I was bought, because I choose." The days that followed were not easy. Trust grew slowly, like grass after fire. Ayana, startled at sudden noises, slept lightly and kept a knife within reach at all times. Thomas did not question it. He gave her space, gave her respect, and let his actions speak where words might fail. The girls followed her everywhere, learning her language in pieces, laughing when they mispronounced words, listening wide-eyed to stories of mountains, rivers, and stars that carried names older than memory. In return, they taught her small, ordinary miracles. How their mother used to braid their hair, how Thomas burned biscuits but tried anyway, how grief could live beside joy without destroying it. One evening, as the sun sank low and painted the land gold, May fell asleep with her head in Ayana's lap. Clara leaned against her other side, tracing the beadwork on Ayana's dress. Thomas watched from the doorway, heart tight and full all at once. He realized then that something rare had happened. Not rescue, not charity, but choice layered upon choice. Ayana had not replaced their mother, and she never tried to. Instead, she became something new, a bridge between what had been lost and what might still be built. Months later, when whispers reached the ranch about a man who had defied the town, and an Apache woman who now stood tall beside him, Thomas only smiled. Let them talk. The home that grew there was quieter, stronger, truer than anything he had known before. Ayana planted seeds from her homeland near the house. When they bloomed, she said it meant the spirits approved. On the first anniversary of the day in the square, the girls surprised Ayana with a gift, 2 simple necklaces they had made themselves. "For our mom," May said softly. Ayana closed her eyes, tears slipping free at last, not from pain, but from belonging. She embraced them, understanding that family was not born from blood alone, but from brave hearts, choosing one another in a cruel world. And that is where this story leaves us, not with chains or auctions, but with a truth worth remembering. Sometimes the smallest voices make the bravest choices, and sometimes love enters our lives wearing the face of the unexpected. If this story moved your heart, inspired you, or made you believe in humanity again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel